Secretary, good to see you. I never ask incorrect questions either. And the last secretary, I asked questions about how much energy we use, and she had no clue. So let's get big picture here. You have extreme expertise about how energy in this country works. I am worried about everybody who has testified here, especially those recently who have talked about data centers and the demand that we are going to see, rising demand for electricity consumption, and how we're going to keep up with manufacturing. Just big picture priorities that you have set out that will enable us as a country to set the conditions for private industry to meet that demand with adequate supply. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, look, as you know, over the years, we've created huge regulatory burdens on building infrastructure, on building pipelines, on building power plants, on building transmission lines. If you make it harder and harder and more expensive to do things, well, guess what? You get less of them. And that's what's happened in the United States. I heard a comment earlier that U.S. oil and natural gas production were at all-time highs in 2023, which was true, but that's because it's dominantly on private land and state land, and it's not on federal land. We've had huge federal obstruction efforts. They haven't been entirely effective on oil and gas that's produced on private lands and on state lands. But when you restrict the ability to build pipelines and grow the transportation, you ultimately restrict the growth of it. Power plants, with the Clean Power Plan, if you build a new power plant today, you have to have carbon capture and sequestration injected underground like 11 years from now. That's a technology we don't have at commercial scale, massively expensive, parasitic load of maybe a third of the power plant has to go to that thing. People aren't going to invest money and build power plants with constrictions like that. There's a lot of reasons we haven't built as much new capacity as we should. And it's critical for this administration and this Congress that we work together to remove these obstacles and barriers that chill investment, because we need to lead in AI. We need to win in AI. We can lead and we can win in AI. But to do that, we need to get overly burdensome, truly not focused on environment regulations out of the way so capital will flow and things will be built. We need some simplification with permitting. We need to make FERC move more efficiently. But I will tell you, in this administration, and I know in this Congress, there are many people working tirelessly to achieve just that. So I'm optimistic, but yes, big changes need to be made.
Thank you for your work on deregulation. Thank you for the work to set the conditions so that it allows industry to innovate, it allows industry to provide affordable, reliable energy that actually works, as opposed to what we saw the last 4 years. And on November 5th, American public spoke loud and clear. I want to talk about the Mexico Pacific LNG export site and see if you have an update for us on that, what would be 1,000 BCF capable pipeline to deliver LNG to our partners and allies. And is there a status on this pipeline, on the permitting request?
Representative Pfluger, say that again. Which pipeline?
The Mexico Pacific Saguaro Energia, and it basically goes from the Permian Basin to the west coast of the Pacific with about 1,000 BCF capability.
I need to check into that, because that will not be just DOE on that. But I am aware of the project, and I need to check into that and get back to you on that.
Thank you for that. And so I know there's been some questions on the SPR. Just how damaging was it to see 300 million barrels flow out, and for political expediency? I know there may have been some questions previously asked about this, but what can we do legislatively so that this never happens again?
I don't have a good answer to the latter question, but I think it's a dialogue we should have. And as you said, what would the damage? Look, there was damage to the facilities from drawing out oil too fast. That's certainly upwards of $100 million of repairs that are going on. It's a reduction in our security right now because we have meaningfully less oil stored in our strategic petroleum reserve. And I think it's a reduction in confidence in the seriousness of the United States. Strategic petroleum reserves are for strategic challenges that may arise in our future that we need to be prepared for, and to show that we're willing for political purposes to flush away nearly half of our strategic reserve for a short-term help in an election, presumably, I think hurts the credibility of the United States in how we view energy and how we view our strategic security.
Thank you for your leadership. My district represents almost 45% of the country's crude oil production, and they want predictability. They want a horizon that they can provide that affordable, reliable energy on. Thank you for helping to set those conditions. I yield back.